All right, welcome everybody. As promised, we're back. Thank you for sticking around or hanging around. And we got Martin Pea in the background running the Zoom and feeding the monkeys that are cranking the little cranks, and hopefully we'll be able to stay on with you. So if you're on our Zoom platform or Facebook Live, thank you for attending. And I'm going to check one thing here. Okay, we're good. So last week I gave like 5 webinars. 2 of them were from the mainland. Mainland company had hired me, and each session was like 4 hours. So for 2 days, and then I gave another webinar for a different mainland company this week. So I'm glad that they started at 1 o'clock their time, because I remember a company from the East Coast hired me and they said, yeah, we're starting at 9. And, I thought it was 9 Hawaii time. And that was the one I remember. I had to get up at 4 a.m. due to the time difference. So I learned my lesson. From now on, when mainland companies or international companies want me to speak, I make sure to confirm the time is Hawaii Standard Time. And people get confused even by an hour or two. They think that it's Pacific time and that's Hawaii, because Hawaii is in the Pacific Ocean, but that's really not the case. So anyway, welcome. We got a good title and a talk today. This is Lance Luke, National Building Expert. Webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection, which is a inspection and construction management company based in Honolulu, Hawaii. We service the neighbor islands and even the mainland, mainly the West Coast, San Francisco, LA, San Diego. We go as far as Las Vegas, but that's probably as far as we would go for work. So the topic today is, how long does it last? And I'm not speaking, I'm not the spokesman for Viagra or anything like that. How long does it last is applicable to buildings in this context. So the question would be, well, how long does a building last? Any kind of building. It doesn't last forever, right? So here we have a picture of the Colosseum in Rome and then the pyramids in Egypt. And I was just visiting the Colosseum in November, several months ago, and I took this picture. It's pretty awesome to see these buildings that are so old that are still standing. And then when I look around in Honolulu, some of these buildings that are built in the 60s and 70s are falling apart, and sometimes it gets pretty scary. So let's talk about the different building components, like your foundation, walls, roof, that kind of thing. How long do those last? So this is a brief overview. If you're a condominium owner or property manager, you would look at your reserve study to look at the building components and how long they're supposed to last, and how long they're going to last, because sometimes a data that shows how long a building component is supposed to last may not be the same time period as how long that building is going to last. There's a difference between those time periods depending upon repair and maintenance, environment, and so forth. So it's not one size fits all. So for instance, a high-rise building, say in San Antonio, Texas, may last longer than a high-rise building in Hawaii because of the difference in the climate, humidity, how much salt's in the air, and weathering and that kind of thing. So a foundation of a building structure can last 100 years or more. And we're talking about buildings. It doesn't have to be an office building or high-rise condo. It could be like a bridge. Okay, so the caveat to this is the 100 years plus is in general, generally speaking. Now, I can say if there's absolutely no repair and maintenance done, no inspections done, then that structure is not going to last 100 years. It's going to last in a shorter time frame because of no maintenance or lack of maintenance. So let's talk about your building walls. Okay, your walls normally would last 75 years plus, and I'm talking about brick, CMU, concrete, hollow tile block. The Colosseum, and this is a picture of me in front of the Colosseum, of course, lasted over 75 years, over 100 years, several hundred years, and it's still standing. So there's a difference. And in the early days when Rome was building, now they're finding out today, doing testing, that there was something ingredient in the concrete, and that's why it lasts so long. It doesn't get worn, it hardly cracks, and in some cases they say it can withstand the weather and in more protection than today's buildings. So you have these blocks of limestone, and it's not even painted, and it's been exposed to the weather for so many years. And what happens is the fact that it's still standing is a good sign, right? So we'll find out more about that, the properties of the concrete and what they use. Let's talk about your roof. Your roof can last 50 years plus, depending on what kind of coating and, of course, your inspection and repair and maintenance. So the roof coating that's covering your roof, the range is between 5 to 20 years plus. And here's a idea, if you don't know how long your roof is going to last, you look at the warranty. Okay, so when you have your roof done, and it doesn't matter whether it's a house roof or whether it's a commercial building roof, it doesn't matter. The same thing holds true. If you look at the warranty, or you ask the contractor, get information from the contractor, what kind of warranty am I getting? So if the warranty from the building product manufacturer, from the roofing manufacturer says 5 years, then don't expect your roof to last 10 or 20 years, right? So that's the indication of how long it's going to last or how long it's supposed to last, right? The other thing is talk to experts in the field, talk to roofing contractors, people who do reserve studies, building consultants, engineers, and they can tell you. And what you need to know is the warranty period may not be the date that you really want to latch onto. You want to latch onto the date that your consultant or your roofing contractor, after he inspects the roof, would tell you, because the warranty may say 20 years, but the contractor or whoever is inspecting the roof will say, oh, your roof's only going to last 15 years. Okay, so there's a difference. So that's the coating of the roof. What other kind of materials go on a roof? Well, you have asphalt shingle, and asphalt shingle may last 20 to 50 years depending on what type of shingle there are. So the brand and the quality of the shingles are different. When someone says Architect 80, there's not one brand of Architect 80 and one specific model. You got a plain model, then you got a better model, and then you got a best model. And of course, it's driven by price, right? So you're not going to get the best Architect 80 shingle to last 50 years if you're paying a low price and all you get is a 30-year shingle. So make sure that you know the difference and you check your warranties. Let's talk about concrete, steel, and wood. Concrete can last 50 years or more, but you have to, inspect and repair in 15 to 20 years. Okay, so when I say inspect, I'm not saying wait 15 years or 20 years to do your inspection. If it's concrete, you should be inspecting once a year or maybe every 2 years or so, but don't wait longer than that. The reason why you're inspecting is because you want to look for the paint. You want to look at the paint or whatever is covering that bare concrete and seeing what condition that is. Because if your paint's peeling, right, and water gets in, your concrete's not going to last 50 years. You're going to have spalling, you're going to have water hitting the rebar, corroding the rebar, then that leads to cracking, to spalling, and now you're faced with a huge bill for repairs. Now steel normally lasts 35 years. You repair in 20 to 30 years. And you might ask, well, wait a minute, there's bridges that are up for 80 years and they're still standing, or 100 years. And I said, yeah, you're right. But the repair and maintenance and painting, happens every 10 or 15 years. And that's why you extend the lifespan of the steel. So if you don't pay attention to it, and let's say there's a steel bridge and you don't do any repair, no maintenance, the lifespan may be 35 years. It'll start corroding and it'll become unsafe. Okay, so that's the problem we have today in the United States, where there have been a lack of repair and maintenance and inspections, and these bridges are all in very bad shape. Let's talk about wood. How long does the wood last? Oh, about 35 years. You repair in 15 to 20 years. Now, the caveat is that if you're in an area that is prone to termites, like Hawaii or Florida, okay, you really got to pay attention to that and have the treatment done, because it's, your house isn't going to last 35 years. Now, in some parts of the country, you have these powder post beetles or carpenter ants or bees, and they can cause damage to the wood. So basically, your house can still stand 100 years if you pay attention and do the proper repair. Now, when I mentioned the word termites, there's both dry wood and ground. Ground termites are the worst, right? So they can attack the house and eat a single family house. Within 1 to 2 years, that house is basically leveled. So these critters are pretty hungry and you don't want to feed them. Let's talk about paint and waterproofing. Painting, the lifespan of paint is about 8 to 10 years. And you can check with your painting manufacturer, or you look at the paint can and you see how long. And these lifespans are based on best case scenario. When I say best case scenario, if a paint is going to last 8 to 10 years, the prep has to be good preparation. So in other words, if there's no preparation, or the preparation is bad, and you skimp on the prime, your mill thickness of your prime coat or your finish coat is less than as specified, the paint is not going to last 8 to 10 years like it says on the can or what the manufacturer tells you. Okay, it's not because of the prep. So best case scenario is, in a perfect world, the contractor does his prep work correctly. He sands the wood, he patches all the defects, and then he uses his prime coat and lets it dry, and he uses the right mill thickness, and then he applies a finish coat, and everything is up to spec. Only then will the paint last 8 to 10 years. Now, people stretch it and they don't paint their buildings for 15 years or 20 years. Okay. So if a building has not been painted, and I'm talking about a commercial building like office building, high-rise condo or townhouse building, if you have not painted for 20 years, you're overdue. You missed 2 cycles already of painting. And then what happens is you have additional costs, okay? In addition to just painting, now you have repair costs. You have wood rot, termite-eaten wood, you have concrete spalling, and so you add the cost of the painting to concrete and wood repair, and now your bill is huge, and that's because of neglect. You haven't painted at the right cycle. So make sure you follow the proper cycles. And if you're a condo owner or property manager or board member, make sure you follow the recommendations on the reserve study. Let's talk about waterproofing. Waterproofing is sort of like paint, but it's a higher grade. It's a waterproofing system. You may have 5 applications, and waterproofing generally lasts between 5 to 10 years. Okay, and we're talking about a parking deck or walkways or lanai. When you have it coated, you got to inspect it and recoat after the 5-year period. And it could be waterproofing material on concrete, or it could be on wood. I haven't seen too much success with waterproofing on wood. It's just not as durable as concrete. So, we're testing different products out and see what works. It's always an issue because the wood has a lot of connections. Your decking of your deck is only a 4x8 plywood sheet, so you have to nail these sheets together. So every time you have a connection, there's basically an opening and a chance for failure. Whereas a concrete deck, it's poured in one sitting, so there's not too many connections there, although there could be expansion joints and those kind of things if it's a huge deck. But for the most part, waterproofing is going to last 5 to 10 years. There's products out there that they tout 20-year warranty, but is that really real? Read the fine print. The fine print may say you have to inspect every year, and you have to touch up and do this and that, to keep your warranty so that it's not voided. So make sure you read the fine print and all the paperwork. Let's dive into electrical and plumbing systems. How many of you guys actually have inspections done of your electrical system? Well, not many. It's sort of like, set it and forget it kind of thing. So electrical systems, the lifespan in this, how long does it last? It's 35 to 40 years. Okay, so you would repair or replace it at the 40-year mark, the 40-year point. Now, that doesn't mean you wait 40 years. You want to have inspections done prior to that, well, especially if there's problems, right? So this is just a general snapshot of what we're talking about here. And you could double check these by talking to reserve study people. There's several books, cost analysis books, like Marshall Swift. That's one brand, and there's a bunch of other ones, and there's even online software where you can go on and plug in let's say electrical sub panel, and they'll tell you how long that's going to last and what it costs and those kind of things. The other title of the book is RS Means, MEANS, and those are the go-to guides for looking at cost of construction and also the useful life of these components. Plumbing systems, 35 to 40 years, repair, replace it 40 years. Sort of like electrical. How many of you guys do that? I know buildings around town, Honolulu and even neighbor islands. If your plumbing system lasts 35 to 40 years. And I'm talking about either cast iron piping, drain piping, or galvanized supply pipe. So if those piping systems would last 35 to 40 years, but your building is 50 years old or 60 years old, you might say to yourself, the math doesn't make sense. So if we never replace our plumbing systems and it lasts 40 years and our building is 60 years old, we're like 20 years overdue, right? But then you may say, well, but we haven't had any leaks or anything. Okay, so just because you have not had any leaks, that doesn't mean that there is not a problem. Okay, so no leaks is not indicative of nothing wrong with your plumbing system, because there's always ways to determine the condition of the pipes, right? You could look at it, cut a hole in the wall and actually look at the pipe. You could take pieces of pipe out and look at it, analyze it. You can scope it. You can run a video camera through the pipe and take a look. And there's different ways to figure out what the condition is, right? So if your building is 60 years old and you have cast iron drain piping, I would be really shocked if you told me that there were no leaks in your building. I know buildings that were built in the 70s that having multiple leaks in their drain piping just because of the age. See, so a lot of buildings now, and it's condominium buildings, it's office buildings that have older plumbing systems are going through a retrofit now of your cast iron piping, and even in some cases your galvanized supply pipe. What happens with galvanized pipe? It corrodes and rusts from the inside. So even if you look at the pipe from the outside and it looks decent, that's not a true picture of what the pipe actually looks like inside the pipe. Okay, it may be clogged. If you have a 4-inch diameter cast iron drain pipe, over the years it gets clogged, and then that 4-inch may get down to 3-inch, 2-inch, 1-inch, and then no inch. And if it gets down to no inches, guess what? Your pipe is totally clogged and you have an overflow. And you do not want to be in a condo building and where there's an overflow of your wastewater piping, and it spreads from the 28th floor down to the 8th floor. I mean, that's a major leak there. Let's talk about mechanical equipment. You have HVAC, which stands for air conditioning, basically, because we don't have too much heating in Hawaii. But your air conditioning system lasts 15 to 20 years, no matter what type. If it's a window wall unit, it may last 10 years, right? If it's a split system, it may last 10, 15. You may get 20 years out of it, but it's running overtime, after 12 years, 12 to 15 years. If it's a central air conditioning system, 15 to 20, but these numbers are based on proper service. If you're servicing it properly, like the manufacturer says, then it's going to last this long. If it doesn't, then you may want to make a claim under your warranty. Okay, but not every warranty says that they're going to replace every component or they're going to replace the whole thing. They may say, well, only this thing is wrong, so we're just going to replace that. Or what was your maintenance like? Well, you never had your split system service for 10 years and now it broke. Well, we're not going to replace it for free because you never did anything to help the cause. So, that's just a heads up. Boilers, which is a name for a water heater. So on commercial buildings like hotels, condos, bigger apartment buildings, shopping centers, the water heater is normally called a boiler because it boils water. So I got 15 years lifespan. So if your water heater is over 15 years old, it's like running on borrowed time already. But another indication is you look at the condition of the water heater. I have an image here on the left of a gas water heater. And as you can see, all that rust and corrosion on the top, this heater is shot already. So if you see rust corrosion on the shell, the outer shell on the top, on the side, or on the bottom of your water heater, so much rust, and that's already a red flag that it's overdue for replacement. Okay. The other thing is that if you have copper piping, like this copper tubing, and you see that turquoise patina looking buildup there, that's indication that there's a pinhole leak. So if you see these telltale signs, then it's already telling you, you know, I need to be replaced. Some more equipment, you know, you have your cooling tower on a top of a high-rise building, and then also your fire alarm system. Your fire alarm system and your smoke alarm system, it's 10 to 15 years. So how many of you folks actually had inspections done of your fire alarm system or your smoke alarm system? I've inspected buildings that were 20, 30 years old, and they never once had their fire alarm system checked out or replaced, right? Which is pretty bad. They may have somebody check it out for purposes of documentation for the fire department, which is required, but you know, anybody ever upgraded theirs? It's very rare. Fire sprinkler systems, 10 to 20 years. Be sure you check your heads, especially in Hawaii. There's a lot of salt in the air and the heads are exposed. When you see corrosion or that patina looking thing around the head of your fire sprinkler, guess what? If it needs to go off and there's so much rust and corrosion, it may not even work. So, you know, that's another heads up. And just recently in Hawaii, we had a high-rise fire in a building called the Lelepono Tower. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that building did not have fire sprinklers, just like the Marco Polo building. So, and one person died in the Lelepono. So it's not an easy thing to talk about, but I know it's a money issue, but I'm always of the safety first ideal. So it's a life safety issue. I would say these high-rise buildings need to have fire sprinkler systems. You cannot put a value on somebody's life. So if your building has to spend $3 million to install a fire sprinkler system, then is it worth it? Well, how much is it worth for a person to die? Right? So it's just kind of crazy when you think about it. Some tips here: inspections, repair, and maintenance are very, very important. If you're a condo, you follow a professional reserve study and make sure it's a professional reserve study, not one done by somebody who doesn't have the credentials, okay, to do a reserve study. So that's key. And then the other thing to be aware of is your reserve study. Make sure it's a level 1, not some update when they keep updating it and the numbers and everything is wrong. Okay, so that's just another takeaway also. Some case studies. Well, I can tell you a whole bunch where I inspect these buildings and I'm surprised that, you know, the buildings built in the 70s and they never had any electrical inspection or plumbing inspection all these years. It's like, oh, what are they waiting for? Well, they're waiting for something to go wrong first. So instead of being proactive, they become reactive. And, you know, instead of inspecting your plumbing and you wait for a leak, that's reactive. Now you got to go fix it. Now, on a case of electrical, if there's a short circuit and it causes a fire, and then, you know, you're reacting to that, when you could have prevented that situation had you done a proper inspection and replaced some of these old electrical circuit breakers or some old wiring. and that kind of thing. So there's a whole bunch more studies that I can talk to you about, but review the reserve study and follow up on those components. Just because there's a reserve study doesn't mean that everything is accurate. Or if the reserve study says your roof is going to last 10 years more, but then there's a leak, well, isn't it that red flag to say, well, maybe this roof is not going to last that long? Okay, so every component double check. And the reserve study is not only for the property manager and the board, it's for every single unit owner. So if you're a condo unit owner, I would urge you to review the reserve study, go down the fine print and understand it. And if there's some question you have, pose it to your property manager or to your board. And those are good tips. So in conclusion, I'm saying make sure that your building is properly inspected and by experts, not by lay people who may not have the ability to do a proper inspection. Now, what you miss, we've given webinars. I think this is our 3rd year of giving webinars, and we've had webinars almost on every single topic to do it, building and construction, at least the major ones. We talked about roof, electrical, plumbing, painting, hurricane ties, reserve studies. There's a whole bunch. If you go to our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site, there's a list of webinars that you can select, and it's on demand, so you can watch it whenever you want. If you can't sleep and you need to go to sleep, click on a webinar on maybe spalling repair, and maybe you get bored and fall asleep. But we're coming up, Mark and I are coming up with our own brand of popcorn. So if you tell us you're going to watch more than 2 webinars, we may send you microwave popcorn or something. You can eat it as a snack. What's coming up? Let me look at this list real fast. We have 2 in February, 2 webinars, and the title is Fire Code Inspections, which is really important, top of mind, just because we just had that recent fire. And then the other webinar is Ancient Buildings in Italy. And why did I choose that topic? Well, I was in Italy. My wife and I actually went on a cruise in Italy, and I decided to look at these ancient buildings and take pictures and present a webinar about these old buildings. So it was kind of fun checking out these old buildings that are super old and they're still standing. Now, before I get to the Q&A, visit our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site. It has takeaways. It has a couple books you can get for free. PowerPoints, you can download our PowerPoints as handouts. So we got a lot of good stuff there on our website. So visit it often, because we keep adding more and more things to it. So you got questions, I got answers. So if you need to get a hold of me, my phone number is 808-422-2132, and that's in Honolulu, Hawaii. If you're attending on Zoom or watching on Facebook, be sure to dial 808, especially if you're calling from outside of Hawaii or international. And my email is lanceluke@hawaiibuildingexpert.com. If by chance you totally forget all this information I'm telling you and you want to get a hold of me, you just go to your favorite search engine, Google or DuckDuckGo, type in Lance Luke, building expert, and my contact information will come up right away. So one other thing before we get to the Q&A, there's a building expo coming up in March, and it's called the hold on a second, I'll give you the exact name. It's called the 2023 Hawaii Building Buildings, Facilities, and Property Management Expo. And it's on March 8th and 9th, which is Wednesday and Thursday at the Blaisdell Exhibition Hall. And it's free admission for people who are in the industry. And a lot of people are in the industry, and you can get in free. Also, I want to say that on Wednesday, February 8th, I'm giving a live seminar at 10 o'clock in the morning. And the title is How Safe is Your Building? And for all the attendees, you're going to get a free book that I wrote. And the title is How Safe is Your Building? So I'm going to be passing free books out. If you want my autograph, it's $20. So I can autograph the book, but the book is free. So I'd like to bring Martin back on, see if there's any questions that came up on Facebook or on Zoom, or anybody that wants to go on the chat.
Yes, Lance, we have some.
Okay, let's go for it.
All right. Yeah. Well, we have a viewer listener on Facebook that asked, are buildings moving towards tankless water heaters? Good question.
Okay, it all depends. The latest tankless job, I was going to say thankless, but sometimes it is, thankless too. Well, let me back up. Okay, a regular water heater has a tank, okay, and it may hold 40 gallons up to 100 or 200, whatever the case may be. So, as you know, a 200-gallon water heater, if you have like 6 or 10 of them, it takes up a lot of space. So, and it takes a longer time in that whole tank to heat water up, for hot water. As opposed to a tankless heater, it's way smaller and it's on demand. So what happens is water goes through that little box and then it gets it gets heated up. So whether it's electric or gas, and it's in instant demand. So a lot of houses, there's a trend for more homes to get tankless because it takes less space. And then now bigger buildings are looking at that. Now, the caveat is that if you have a gas boiler, you already have gas, then it's easy to change it out to tankless, okay, if it's possible, depending on different factors. Now, if it's an electric water heater and you switch to a tankless, electric water heater runs on, and I'm talking about residential, because when you get to commercial, it's a lot different. So on a residential house, your regular water heater, that's a tank, it runs on a 30-amp breaker. But if you switch to an electric tankless, okay, it needs a 75-amp. So there's a difference. So you cannot use your 30-amp breaker. So you have to upgrade your electrical. Okay, so some people don't know that, and you got to be sure that your tankless requires, say, 70 amps. Your house can manage 70 amps because that's way more than the 30 amps. Now, in a commercial building, your tankless don't run on, that small amperage. So just, be aware of that. But there's a trend towards that just because of space too. And I don't know, it's like a toss-up. Is a tankless water heater going to last longer than a regular traditional water heater? Maybe, maybe not. I've heard some situations when the tankless water heaters first came out, they were not lasting not longer than a year. So that's something to consider. Make sure you do your homework and you get other opinions. Don't just take one opinion and run with that. You want to be sure you're checking things out, because it's a lot of money when you have to replace components. But yeah, thank you for that. That was a good question. We got any others?
Yes, yes, and that was an interesting new question. Never thought about those things. Um, the next question that's come in is, in your webinar on reserve studies, so this is somebody who's visited with us before. You said that most of the reserve studies you have reviewed were not correct. Please explain if the problem is due to the incorrect lifespans of building components.
The reason for reserve studies to be in error is because they may have building components that are not listed on the reserve study. And they may have building components that are listed incorrectly. They may have like, let's take a roof, for example. You may have a lifespan of the roof that's incorrect. Your useful life is incorrect. Your remaining useful life is incorrect. And maybe the cost to replace your roof is wrong because they didn't get a current cost. They used like a number that was in their reserve study 5 years ago. So there's different factors that come into play. I'll give you another example, cast iron drain piping. I reviewed a reserve study of a high-rise condo, by the convention center. And they had a number, $40,000 for cast iron drain piping. Well, where did that number come from? That number is like way off. You can't even fix 2 condo units, replace cast iron drain piping for $40,000. And so now you have a reserve study that's totally underfunded because your amount to repair or replace is totally off. So where did they get these numbers? I don't know. Then later on when we check, that was just based on if we had to go in and they had leaks and maybe four units had leaks. So that number is just based on to go repair the leaks. Well, that doesn't conform to the reserve study standards. The reserve study says you have a building component and you have to either repair or replace it, replace all of it, not like spot repairs. That's why the number was so low. Now, in a reserve study, when your total amount is low, the dollar amount, because of errors in the reserve study, guess what? The reserve study total is, their maintenance fee is based on the reserve study. Okay, so if the number's wrong and it's too low, your maintenance fee is going to be too low. Okay, and then imagine year after year, your maintenance fees aren't enough to pay for all the components because it was wrong. Okay, and here's what happens in real life. When the building needs to get their cast iron replacement done in the whole building, and it costs $6 million, there's no $6 million in the reserve study, right? There's no reserve account that the condo building has that has $6 million earmarked for the cast iron piping. Now what happens, right? Now they have to either special assess the owners or go get a construction loan. Okay, and that's just the reality of things. And you may ask, well, we don't have money, we're on fixed incomes. I live in this condo, how am I going to afford to pay it? Well, then instead of writing a check for $35,000 for cast iron piping, then you agree to get the loan and you pay $250 a month or something like that, right? So there's ways to kind of figure out the problem, but that's what's happening in the condo world out there, and not only in Hawaii, in other parts of the United States as well. Some, believe it or not, some states don't even require reserve studies, and some states require a reserve study, but they do not require funding, the reserve components, which makes absolutely no sense to me at all. That building collapse in Florida, Surfside, they had a reserve study and they needed $15 million or something, but then there was no law, no requirement to fund. So you have a situation where your building needs all these repairs, but there's no law to force the unit owners to put money in to pay for these. So You know, no wonder they had a situation out there. So anyway, that's enough of that. We got any other comments or questions?
We got a couple more questions, Lance. This one is from a condo building owner who says, I live in a condo building with jalousie windows. I told the manager that the windows are not safe due to glass falling out, but he said it was too cold and nothing can be done. Is that true?
Okay, well, it's true. Okay, it's true that at the time the building was built, and you know, jalousie windows were made long ago, and it was commonly used in townhouses and houses and even high rises in the 60s and in the 70s. And you could have a 25-story building that has jalousie windows, you know, floor to ceiling or something like that. Now, at the time the building was built, and I'll give you an example. Let's say the building was built in 1968. It had jalousie windows, right? At the time, it was too cold. It followed the building code. So in one respect, the statement by the building manager is correct, but he's incorrect in saying that nothing can be done, right? A lot of things can be done. But the problem is it's going to take money to get it done. But it may not be money from the condo association. It may be money from the unit owner. Okay, so read your condo docs. There's a governing docs such as a declaration. And if you read that document, there may be something in it that says, these are the components that the unit owner owns. And then another paragraph, these are components that are common area. Okay, so the windows may be the responsibility of the unit owner, if the declaration states that, or it may be the responsibility of the association if it's considered a common area or common element. And off the bat, if somebody asked me, well, you know, who owns the windows, I would say, well, I don't know for sure, right? Usually it may be the association, but in some cases it's the unit owner. So in this particular circumstance, if the people bothered to do the research and in the declaration it stated that it was a unit owner's responsibility, then the building manager should have said, well, it's your responsibility, owner, so you have to pay for replacement. And what you do is, you know, go talk to window manufacturers, window contractors. I want to see a plan because we need to have the board approve it. Now, if the declaration stated that the windows are a common element that belong to the condo association and not the unit owner, then the onus is on the board to come up with design guidelines and approve the window guidelines. So when somebody says, oh, board, I need to replace my windows, the board could say, well, here's our window design guidelines. We have only one window or two different types that you can choose from. You can't install anything else because the board already approved, or the architecture design review committee approved this type. And in some cases, they even specify the contractor to use because the contractor has done window replacements in the building. They're familiar in how to do it, and they have their certain brand of window already approved. So there's other things that can be done. So although in this case the windows may have been too cold, if glass slats start falling out, that's not safe, right? So in that case, I can say that although the windows conform to the code at the time the building was built, it doesn't conform to the code today for safety. So you can throw it back, even if there's a code requirement. The building code doesn't allow, like, you have unsafe windows, right? So there's a gray area there. And really, I would do your homework and talk to the manager again and see what can be done, especially if it's a common area. I would go to the board, write letters to the property manager and the board saying we have unsafe windows, you know, we should do something about it. But be aware, you might be labeled as a troublemaker, because if the board decides that they're going to need to replace all the windows and there's no money for that, they might say, oh, blame that guy. He's the one that started this. And now, there's a special assessment. So interesting. Yeah. So it gets kind of technical, but it's good to do the research and find out what the true facts are and not listen to somebody if they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Lance, and it can get complicated, it seems like, yeah. We
Right.
have a couple more questions. Let me throw them at you. This one says, my 40-year-old condo building has not had any inspections of the electrical and plumbing system. Are we really overdue if we had no problem?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, you are overdue. Talk to other building owners, talk to property managers, talk to contractors, other consultants, people who do like what I do in construction management, and they'll tell you, at the 35 to 40-year mark, that's the time to have inspections done. And the condo law doesn't state, there's nothing in the condo law that exempts boards from not conducting inspections and not fixing up the building if there's no money. There's nothing in the law that says that. It's actually the opposite. The law says that the board as a whole is responsible for maintaining the property. That's what it says. So if you ignore having inspections, right, to your major components such as electrical, plumbing, is that properly maintaining the building? I don't think so, right? The other thing is that if in the industry, if somebody that's a professional, that's an expert, says that you should get an inspection, often, or at least like at the 10-year, 20-year mark, and you haven't, then you're not following generally acceptable standards or practices in the industry. So you would be wrong again. There's no position that you can take that you would be right in not doing your fiduciary duty by having at least an inspection done. And you know what happens? You know why people don't get inspections? Why these boards tell me, oh, we don't want to get an inspection. First of all, it costs $8,000 to have an electrical inspection done, by a professional contractor. So already they're like, we don't want to spend that kind of money. But you know what the real reason is? The real reason is, whoa, when they come and do the inspection, they're going to find all kind of stuff wrong. And then it's going to cost us $2 million to upgrade our electrical system. That's the reason why they don't want to have the inspection done. It's like, okay, you want to be an ostrich? You bury your head in the sand and not know about these things? I'll tell you this, what happens if there's a short circuit, there's a fire, and people get killed, okay? And of course, there's going to be a lawsuit. And in discovery, they're going to ask questions. They're going to want to see documentation. They're going to say, well, board, did you even talk about this? Did you discuss this issue? Oh, yeah, well, on this date, we talked about it. Oh, well, what happened? Oh, we decided that we didn't want to because of the cost. Do you think that the jury or the judge is going to accept that as like, oh, well, you did your due diligence, you at least talked about it, right? So the fact that you discussed it and you didn't do anything about it, that's negligence already, right? So how much is the insurance company going to cover on a claim like that, right? Insurance companies now, especially with that Liliapono fire, they're like, oh, wait a minute, we're not even gonna cover, we're not insuring any building that asks us for insurance if that building does not have fire sprinklers. And the other thing is that if you already have insurance from us, and let's say I'm XYZ insurance company, then the next time your insurance comes for renewal, if you don't have fire sprinklers, we're not going to renew your policy. Oh, what about that? Or okay, we might renew it, but we're going to change some of the terms. What are the changes? Oh, there's going to be $150,000 deductible. Oh, wait a minute, we can't afford to pay that. Oh, okay. Well, you know what, then, why don't you call up the insurance company down the street? They call up and the insurance company says the same thing. Oh, forget these rip-off insurance companies. Let's go find another company on the open market. And then you know what's going to happen? They do the research, they come back and said, oh, our premium is going to be $300,000 per year because you're on the open market now, right? You're not dealing with the people that normally service you. So it's going to be a wild, wild world out there as things get worse, especially with insurance. And you need insurance, right? So you're captive, basically. You're captivated by, you just got to get the lowest terms that you can get, right? At the best cost you can. So I felt like I was on a talk radio or something for a while. But anyway, what else we got?
You're good, Lance. You're good. We get one quick one, and it's how often should we have an inspection for spalling issues?
Okay, I would say, and I'm conservative because I've seen spalling, every year you should have a spalling inspection done. Maybe not professional. Okay, you may have your property manager, resident manager, site manager, board members, you know, just do a look-see, go walk around and things like that. But maybe 2 years, 3 years, but not more than 5 years. You should have a professional come and look. Maybe a spalling contractor, maybe somebody like me, construction engineer, anybody that knows and familiar with spalling. Okay, at least do that. Don't wait 20 years and then, oh, we noticed that pieces of concrete are falling off our building. Wow, that's like way, way too late already. You missed the mark. So I would say at the 5-year mark, and then another 5 years would be 10 years, right? That's good timelines. Okay? You do not want to get into that Florida building situation. Once you see cracks, already that's a red flag. Okay, so, and then here's the thing. If you see cracks and you fix it right away, then it costs a lot less money. If you see these cracks and you don't pay attention to it, and 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line, they turn into like huge spalls. And now instead of a $2,000 fix, it becomes a $200,000 fix, right? And you could have prevented it had you had the inspection done earlier and had it repaired earlier. So basically, that's the takeaway. We got any other comments or questions on Zoom or Facebook?
No, Lance, no questions. I just have my closing comment to your webinar and your question you asked. How long does it last?
Okay, go ahead.
My takeaway is it lasts as long as you maintain and repair it properly.
Yeah,
Never.
that's right. That's right. It's sort of like a car, right?
Yep.
So analogy is, how long do you expect your car to last? If you just put gas and you keep driving around and that's all you do, right? You don't expect it to last a long time, right? Your engine may burn out because you never put oil in, or you're running on, 20 pounds in your tires when it should be 35 pounds. So it's the same thing. And a car is way cheaper than a building. You have condos now selling for $15 million, right? A car is like what, $40,000 or whatever. And people spend more money on their car, take it to a car wash, polishing it, and don't park underneath a tree because the birds will, drop bombs in your car. And they're all diligent in that. And then when it comes to their house or condo building, they let it fall apart. So, keep safe and save money. By spending money, you're going to save money. So I'm getting too excited talking about this, but it's already, past the hour. So I think we'll sign off, but this is a very, very good webinar. And I hope people take note of the information that we provided. And, we invite you to our next webinar. If you have any questions, or if you have ideas of what you want me to cover, let us know and we can do a pop-up webinar. We schedule webinars through the rest of the year. It's all scheduled already, but we're not ashamed to do a pop-up one. In fact, I'm planning to do one specifically on the Lele Pono building. I'm not sure when yet because, Martin's schedule is so booked. I gotta, talk to his assistant to see when there's an opening. And he tells me, oh, well, have your assistant talk to my assistant and make arrangements for a next webinar. Okay, Martin, we'll do that. But anyway, I took enough time and would like to say on behalf of Martin and myself, as the Building Expert Series, keep following us and learn about good stuff. So we'll see you again. Aloha and mahalo.
Aloha.